Hi, Fabricio. Good morning.
Good morning. I am logging, but you are not here yet.
No, I'm just clicking on it right now.
Okay, you saw the link that I sent you this morning?
Yep, I just am opening it right now.
Okay. I don't know who is going to let you in. I am not sure about that part. Oh, here you are.
Oh, I'm right there.
Okay. Maybe it's because you have the, yeah, okay. So you don't need to be allowed to be in.
Let's see this meeting.
All right.
Yeah, good morning.
Hi, how are you?
Let me turn it on. Oh, good. And you,
I have the presentation up.
beautiful. Okay, nice. Good job.
So it looks like people will be able to just click and log in.
Okay. Great. And it starts
in a moment.
5 minutes? Okay.
Well, I have already, this is what, 7:44? It's supposed to be at 2:45.
Is that okay? Is that the time difference?
Let me check. Yeah, it's supposed to be 2:44 right now over there. So we are okay.
Okay. And is there translation for
It looks like
anyone
there
who might
seems
need
to
it?
be something here for English and Spanish. So
Okay.
I don't know how that works.
Okay. Have you, I was going to say when you've done it before.
No, I haven't done this thing before. This is
Oh,
the first
you
time.
haven't. Oh, okay. Okay.
Not on Zoom, you know.
Right. Okay. But you went there, right?
Years ago, yes.
Okay.
Maybe 4 years ago. Yeah.
Okay.
Before this mess.
So it always takes place in the same place.
No,
Oh, no.
goes around. Yeah.
But stays in Italy?
No.
Oh,
Goes around.
okay.
I have been in Portugal. I
Oh, you
couldn't
have?
go to, yeah, I couldn't go to Australia. I think they canceled that one. Maybe that was the last one they tried to do, was in Australia.
Where was
I
it in
couldn't-
Portugal?
Oh, in the capital, at the university.
That's a country I really want to go to.
Oh, it's a lot of fun. Very nice.
Mhm.
Yes,
Yeah.
very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it has been in Spain also with Manolo.
Okay.
Mhm. So yes, it has been around. Well, let's hope that somebody shows up.
That's for sure. I guess I didn't see an email about that. Like you can't see how many people signed up
No,
or how many, okay. Or how many
No.
people are even attending the.
no. And yeah, they did send this email with the links for every conference. And that's
For
where
every
every
session.
presentation, yeah.
Right.
So there is that. So that's what I cut and paste and sent to you this morning.
Thank you. I appreciate that. In all the emails, I
Yes,
appreciate
because
that.
it was not very clear. They sent me another email with a meeting, but it was not ours. So ours was in the email that had a link, an Excel file with all of the links.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
where the link was?
That's where the link was. Yes.
Oh gosh, Fabricio, I thought it was just in one of the more recent emails. So
No.
thank you for sending that to me.
Yeah.
I would have been.
That's right. When I
would've
look at
been
that, I said, "Oh,"
tardy.
because I saw one link and I said, "Oh no, this is like for a general meeting or something." Yeah, it was not ours.
Yeah, thank you.
First, I thought it was ours, but no, it was not.
I'm happy you did a better job doing your homework than me. Looking at this.
Well, let's hope that somebody shows up. So far, nobody.
Okay, this with the this is just the three others are Spanish, English, and then our presentation.
The host, I don't know.
Oh, the host, okay, and then
and
the
they
Spanish and English, okay.
And they are taping the session.
Okay. Right.
So I don't know if we should assume that it's going to be tape and then we just do it. I am not sure, even though there is nobody here. Should we make it? Anyways, because they are taping it?
Let's see. I mean, we can if you want to. I thought they were, or I know that there were others that were recorded to be sent in for a video.
Yeah, but those were like personal presentations. It's already 7:50. So what do you suggest we do? We start?
Sure.
Okay.
And a person, just to, sorry, a person doesn't, I guess, come in and check into the session.
I don't know. We have one
like a
person
host
that
of the
is-
conference.
I have one person here that is the host, but I don't know. And that person is taping the session, so I don't know.
Okay. All
I
right.
say hi, but I didn't hear anything from anybody.
Okay.
All right, so let's start just in case. I only see us here and the
Okay.
translators.
Okay.
So nobody else. Oh well. Okay, well, good afternoon. My name is Fabricio Alcázar. Welcome to our session. I am a professor at the Department of Disability and Human Development at the University of Illinois at Chicago. Joanna?
Hi, I'm Joanna Keel, and I am the coordinator of this project at the University of Illinois at Chicago.
Welcome to our session on promoting entrepreneurship among youth with disabilities. We are going to share some of the challenges that we have experienced amid the COVID pandemic. This project is a nationally funded project from the National Institute of Disability, Independent Living and Rehabilitation Research. Part of the challenge is that technological advances and the COVID-19 pandemic has significantly reduced the number of jobs available to many communities. And in particular, the challenges for people with disabilities has increased. There are many policies that are not impacting in a positive way, addressing the needs of individuals with disabilities. In 2021, only 19% of all individuals with disabilities were working, ages 18 to 24. So this is a very big shortcoming. And they earn far less than most people. And they are also less likely to receive benefits like healthcare compared with other workers. So there is a fundamental challenge for them. The purpose of this study was to design, implement, and evaluate an intervention to engage youth with disabilities into self-employment and entrepreneurship, and offer real opportunities to explore their skills, abilities, and interest and motivation for self-employment and entrepreneurship. These skills are often not tapped in the programs that we have here in the United States. It's very rare that youth in high school are offered opportunities to start businesses. And we are going to also discuss in some detail some of the challenges that we have faced during this project implementation because of the pandemic. The project has 4 main phases. The first phase is to highlight the entrepreneurial awareness and understanding of youth or people with disabilities and see if they want to give it a shot as self-employers. And that means, learning about the process and making a decision to either go for it or not. We have classroom training that we have developed, and we are going to share some details about it with you in a moment. We get feedback. We are collecting feedback from people with disabilities who have experience with self-employment. And we also collecting feedback from our participants, teachers, students. And we are, helping them understand, market prices, niches, competition, etc. As they go into the classroom, they have to develop a business plan and make a pitch. And that pitch is basically a video of their business idea that they share with a group of experts and their peers. They get feedback, and if they are approved by a team of experts, they could get up to $500 in cash for buying equipment and supplies. It's not for salaries. And then we provide technical assistance and support as they implement their business. In terms of the design of the study, during the first year, we conducted interviews with people who have experience with self-employment and entrepreneurship, 20 people, 20 participants. And then we also interviewed service providers and teachers and school principals about this whole idea. In the second year of the study, we are currently in the third year, finishing the third year. We conducted a formative evaluation with one high school and a small group of kids. In the third year, we are continuing this formative evaluation. And for the fourth year, which is starting now, in a month, we are going to enhance the replication of the study with multiple high schools and continue to learn. And we are also collecting information from graduates, from school graduates with disabilities about what happened to them in terms of employment, education, resources and opportunities that they have and we are going to compare their data with the data of our students. And the last year, we are going to replicate that summative evaluation one more time. So I just summarized that, so we can move on. In the third year, we have 3 school sites, 4 special education teachers, 1 cooperative, a special education coordinator, and maybe 20, maybe more students with disabilities because we are recruiting more sites. We are conducting, in terms of measures, we are conducting structured interviews, pre-post entrepreneurship measures of self-efficacy. We are conducting some measures of knowledge about entrepreneurship before and after the intervention training. And we are collecting intake questionnaire, of course, and feedback from the students. In the interviews, we are very interested to learn about their experience with the process, the challenges that they encounter in the process of identifying ideas for businesses, the challenges for implementing the business, opening the business, and then sustaining the business over time. As they are going to finish, because we follow them for up to 6 months, we will collect another interview to find out how they are doing with the implementation. And now Joanna is going to start telling you more detail about the challenges.
So in year 2 was the beginning of implementation at school sites, and that was also the beginning of the pandemic. So as we were moving the project away from the first year, which was just collecting information about what are the challenges, what are the supports that one would need as an individual with a disability, running a small business, we moved forward to actually running the entrepreneurship course in schools. There was one school, was the first kind of pilot site. And right at that time is when the pandemic started. So there were many different kinds of challenges that ensued during that time, especially in the kind of on the ground work in schools. Let's see, Fabricio, I think you have the.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Move it forward. Sorry, I don't think I have the button.
Okay, so
Next
just
slide,
keep telling me,
Okay.
please move it. All right.
Okay. So there were practical challenges of just how education was running, certainly all educational spaces, but particularly talking about K through 12 education in schools here in the city of Chicago. For this particular school, there were no devices, so students did not have iPads, computers, things like that to be able to just get online and do what we're doing now. That was a very new thing since in-person learning was, certainly in secondary schools, was the primary mode of instruction. There were many technological issues and certainly lower attendance rates. So the first site for implementation was an alternative school, a school specifically designed for students who had previously dropped out of high school and on their own accord decided to come back and receive credits to get their high school diploma. This particular population is a transient population anyway. These are students who are facing enormous challenges in their lives, in addition to having the motivation to come back, to high school to get their diploma. They're facing a whole host of issues in terms of poverty, in terms of social emotional challenges that they're encountering every single day. So also for this particular population, low attendance is an issue outside of a pandemic, but certainly a lot of these students do not have a safe home space. So that's something that when online instruction is taking place, do you have a place where you can actually be that's stable and a computer to get onto or an iPad to get onto to actually do the learning that you need to do. And that was incredibly difficult with this particular population. So significantly low attendance rates and just unable to reach students at that time. Next slide, please. Of course, there were significant teaching challenges during this time. As K through 12 educators, there was just no knowledge, at least in the United States, no knowledge of how online instruction should work or hybrid instruction. We had to learn very, very quickly. In addition to that, students with disabilities, and while we're talking about students with more mild disabilities, learning disabilities and things like that, they do require concrete, explicit instruction. So a lot of support that might even be when you're in the classroom, one student is not paying attention or talking with who's sitting next to them or not understanding content, and even something like proximity control where a teacher can actually walk over and redirect a student just can't happen in online instruction. So we have a quote from a teacher who was working with us at that time. The main challenge with COVID was being remote. I had to call students every day. I was sending emails, trying to remind them what they had to do, and I actually couldn't even see what they were doing. So it just really speaks to the fact that not only could the teacher not get in touch with students, but was really, trying to provide support that was incredibly difficult to do over the computer. Here's another quote that is related specifically to special education and being a special ed teacher. If we had been in person, Ms. Y, who's a specialized service teacher, she'd be able to provide the modifications that needed to be spot on. So right there in the classroom when they're needed. While she's doing that, working with the individuals, I could be going around to see what they're doing, who's stuck on what. So this is really speaking to the fact that in special education, in the moment when a student is struggling, special educators are very flexible and they're very responsive in the classroom to be able to attend to that. And that's just much more difficult happening over the computer to be able to actually see that. Next slide. Thank you. There were certainly issues with engagement. So while you're on the computer, and anyone who's taught a class online, even if it's to adults, I teach graduate students on the computer, and even that is difficult for engagement and trying to keep an engaging environment over that format. So not only did students did not have the access to the support, the typical collaboration that you can do in an in-person class. So you can say, hey, get together with your neighbor and talk about your business idea or what your thoughts are, for starting your own business. And that's much more challenging to learn how to do with breakout rooms and have students, especially high school students, be engaged in that. So we have another teacher here who, in her interview, talked about that we would have been able to work better as a team in a classroom setting. I would have loved to have seen them work together in person. A lot of the students gave each other ideas and can give each other feedback. And so again, that's something that if you're not familiar with it as an instructor over the computer and how to really optimize the online learning, that's incredibly challenging to do. The remote instruction was just less motivating overall. So a student says, it wasn't difficult for me to understand. So it's not the understanding, but the only thing that was difficult was just the online aspect of it. And then this other student also echoes, I would say, I wish we weren't always on a call. I'd like to be in person. So kind of yearning for going back to that, the typical format that we're used to in teaching. Next slide. So more engagement issues. Another thing that I think was really, really important to remember during that time is, while just the online teaching issues and reaching students was especially difficult, we also really needed to take into account that these are students in high school. And certainly our students in K through 12, but especially our middle school students and our secondary school students really experience significant social challenges during that time. So the lack of day-to-day social interactions, there was a lot of significant emotional support. Social emotional support that was needed. So students were lonely, they were depressed, they were extremely isolated during that time. And those issues were really pressing and continue to be even now. I know that teachers, even in the United States, as we're back to in-person learning, students being on their own and isolated and not with other kids. Just in the day-to-day, there's been a pretty significant impact of how that even looks for students coming back to in-person learning and the regular routines of just being in school. Next slide. So there was another piece to the puzzle that I think certainly added some difficulty, and we've learned going through kind of year 3. Last spring, we implemented the class in a couple different sites. And those sites were back to, for the most part, back to in-person learning. We did have that, there was that shutdown kind of in the winter time. But for the most part, it was in-person learning. But what we really learned from the group who finished in spring 2022 is that the curriculum itself that was initially designed by a team, while it had a really robust content around business and entrepreneurship and self-employment content, it was fairly inaccessible or there were a lot of accessibility challenges with the curriculum itself. So the vocabulary was way too high for students with disabilities in high school. There was a lot of reading that was required. There was no audio. So the curriculum itself is, mostly a PowerPoint presentation. And there was just a lot of reading on the slide, and there was no audio aspect at all. So students had to be able to read all of that content that was really heavy in a lot of high-level vocabulary in business, actually. There was also kind of a lack of hands-on activities. So it was a lot of didactic learning and information, and less kind of tangible hands-on and collaborative activities. The one thing that we really heard back from students and teachers, the curriculum has a lot of videos. So there is a lot of visual content that's very engaging and really nice examples of businesses and entrepreneurs with disabilities. But again, there was just a lack of, we had students say, we really wanted to do an activity with that. We really wanted to try it out. For example, something like prototyping in their business. And so we learned about that and then started the process on actually revising and improving those components of the curriculum. Next slide, Fabrizio. So also we encountered, of course, with everything else, there are certain challenges to research that I know all researchers engaged in that time, but certainly researchers who are going into spaces, you know, those public spaces that typically would run like schools and things like that. So again, very difficult to take a look at what was happening with the class online because students were not able to get on. Sometimes the class would run, sometimes it wouldn't run over the computer. Obviously, just incredibly challenging to build rapport with students and even teachers, really, if you've never met people in person at all. And we just really didn't, we hadn't been down the learning curve yet of kind of doing things over Zoom. We conduct follow-up interviews with students and teachers at the end of the class. And this was very, very difficult to get in touch with students after the class was finished without building that rapport initially. And then also, as many researchers encountered, just understanding how to make the changes in IRB. So moving from, for example, consenting a student in person, like you normally would do, you'd go into the school and sit down and go over a consent form. And is IRB even going to allow, or how are they going to kind of shift and be flexible for the procedures that need to take place in research given the lockdown or everyone being remote? Next slide, please. So there were, despite all of the difficulties and stressors, we did get a real silver lining. So both students and teachers described the curriculum and just the experience of opening up this kind of opportunity. So Fabrizio spoke to that before, that opportunities in entrepreneurship, learning how to own your own business, run and own your own business. These are not opportunities that are available in high schools typically. And typically, if there is a class that's around business or entrepreneurship, students with disabilities usually don't have an easy access point to get into those classes in an inclusive way. So that's still a challenge here, and it's really not seen very often. So I think that students and teachers were overwhelmingly receptive to the fact that we were just offering this as an opportunity for learning and vocational exploration. So a teacher says, I think they got a lot out of it. It was wonderful to see, because a lot of our students do have a dream of becoming entrepreneurs and owning their own business. So this is something that students do think about, you know, with disabilities, and yet there's no kind of access point to engage in learning more about it. Another teacher says, I think one of the most important parts for the students was when they were developing the support map, because not only do they need the support for entrepreneurship, but just support in their life in general. It gave them opportunities to think about where their support actually came from. And if they didn't have a lot of support, maybe they needed to build it. This is a component of the curriculum where students actually develop a visual map of who is it in their life that can support them in this endeavor. So who might have certain skills or who might provide emotional support. It's something that we call in the field of special education, natural supports. So who is it around you in your daily life who might be able to help you with your small business? And I think a lot of times students with disabilities are not pushed to really figure that out. Who is it that they've surrounded themselves with, whether it's a friend, a parent, someone at their church, where they can really reach out to and say, hey, I don't really know how to do this exactly, or I need help with this. So we do have a portion of the curriculum that really pushes students to build a map of who those people are. And a teacher was really talking about the value of that. A student, also a really great quote from a student, it's been very helpful for young people to also know how to set up a business plan and have a support group, again, echoing that support map. And for us to just know what we have to do, the steps we have to take to achieve our goals and make a business successful. Next slide. So taking a look at all of these challenges, we have to be responsive. We can't just run the same program when we're getting this kind of feedback, and certainly needed to shift and be responsive to the pandemic and the kinds of challenges that we were facing there. So really, I think a main thing that we are addressing now in a very concrete way, is having time open and flexibility to provide specific support to students when they need it. Actually, last semester, I had in the exit interviews with students, we had a number of students say, and this is actually from a site that is far away from where we're located, say, hey, it would have been great if, every Friday or every 2 weeks, the researchers could have gotten on and provided just an hour session. So students could sit down in front of Zoom and go over their business idea and talk about their business plan and just have another person to bounce those ideas off of, rather than just being in their classroom. So we've really listened to that, and we're going to be implementing that this school year. Providing one-to-one support with individual students, again, what I just kind of talked about. Being more intentional about building a community of entrepreneurs. So our team really looking into who are some entrepreneurs out there who can go and do some guest speaking. Can we bring in a panel? Can we connect specific school communities with entrepreneurs even in their own community? We had a teacher who talked to other high school teachers who she was working with, who have small businesses running in addition to their teaching, making cookies, doing t-shirts, things like that. But teachers actually in your school might be kind of running a side business, and actually tapping into them and learning about that, and having those teachers connect with students. So that builds kind of a more community kind of feel of there's other people making a go at this as well. Being really responsive, adjusting, being flexible. I think we all learned a little bit more about that during the pandemic. So looking at, school calendars, testing, interruptions, really understanding the difficulties that teachers encountered, during this time, and just how busy, teachers are during the day. And another thing that we really, I think in terms of the engagement and motivation, is really kind of understanding how to follow students' interests to pursue their own business idea, and then how to kind of shape those interests into an idea that is actually fundable. So we're offering $500 at the end of the class as upstart money in materials or supplies. So how do you kind of take a student's larger idea, for example, opening up an entire restaurant, and kind of boiling that down to here's an actual fundable idea that you can start out small, and the $500 are actually going to make an impact there with your upstart. So rather than starting a whole entire restaurant, maybe you're just selling one food item or something like that. So we really learned more about that. Next slide, Felicia. For the curriculum, we brought on, I'm an educator and have always been a teacher and in education and special education. So the way that teachers are trained, we really have a different lens of looking at curriculum. And so I came in and kind of looked at the initial curriculum, and there's a lot of really phenomenal components to it. But again, we were looking at those accessibility issues in the classroom around having an audio track. So having each slide read out loud, that a student could choose to click on a button and the slide is actually read to them. Just looking again at the general formatting of the PowerPoints. So less words on a slide, right? So not a slide that's packed with reading. That's just overwhelming. It's overwhelming to anyone, but especially a student who has a disability in high school. We really looked at activities, so hands-on activities where we're actually getting students together and having them give each other feedback about their business idea, having students reach out to those people who they've identified in their support map to say, hey, what do you think about this business idea? Is it fundable with $500? Let's talk about the details of it. So really kind of building those activities into the curriculum. We also added a planning graphic organizer. So instead of students kind of doing more didactic learning about learning about how to run a business and what it means to be an entrepreneur, we really started from day one that they are going to start actually planning for their business plan, which is our kind of final product. But they're going to start that at the beginning with a planning form. So we have started revising the curriculum in its entirety, and we're almost to the end. But it takes a lot of focus, and it's a whole team approach of how to look at each presentation, look at each unit, and actually go through slide by slide and really look at all of these different aspects, so that when a teacher opens it up and that a student with a disability is opening it up, it's just a lot more accessible and engaging for students. Next slide.
So, to conclude, as you see, we have learned a lot from this process, and we are very excited that we are starting another tryout of the program. We have multiple high schools that are going to start actually in 2 weeks, the curriculum. And one of the benefits of that is that the students are going to be able to complete the curriculum before they graduate. Because as Joanna mentioned before, in the spring semester of this year, the students graduated and then disappeared. They didn't, it became very difficult for us to track down what happened and all that. And here is going to be different this year because they are going to be able to finish the class while they are still in the school, start their businesses, and we will be able to track down what's going on and see all that. So as Joanna mentioned, we are very happy with the changes that our team has been making in terms of the adaptation and the accessibility of the curriculum. So we are very happy about that. The money is going to be continue to be offered to all those that develop a viable business plan and make the successful pitch. And we are starting conversations with our partners at the Vocational Rehabilitation Agency, which is a federal program here in the United States, and they have offices in every state. In Illinois, we have very close contacts with the directors and top administrators. We are starting to discuss ways where this agency, which provides support and transition support services for students with disabilities in high schools, could actually continue to support this program once our project has disappeared in 2 years and our funding disappears and the $500 disappear. This agency could potentially continue this. So we are starting conversations with them. We are going to be collecting data to share with them about the outcomes and so forth. I also want to mention that, of course, we will continue to follow up all the students that are able to open businesses. And we are looking forward to learning about what happens and use that information about challenges and supports to help and add that information to our last year replication of the intervention. And we are also looking forward to compare the outcomes of our participants with the other regular graduating students with disabilities from regular schools. So I just want to say thank you so much for your interest in this presentation. And this is a way to contact Joanna and her email if you have any additional questions, comments, or interest about the project. Any final comments, Joanna?
No, thank you very much.
So thank you very much for your interest.